Antonio Canova. Long ago in Italy, there lived a child named Antonio Canova. His father had died, so Antonio lived with his grandfather, a poor stonecutter. Antonio was too small to work, but he loved to go with his grandfather to the stone yard. While the old man cut the large, unwieldy blocks of stone, the boy played among the chips, sculpting little figures from soft clay or smaller rocks. Antonio's skill surprised his grandfather. "The boy will be a sculptor someday," he said. Every night when they got home, Antonio's grandmother would say, "What have you been doing today, my little sculptor?" She would take him upon her lap and tell him stories that filled his mind with pictures of beautiful things. The next day, he would try to make some of those pictures in stone or clay. A rich man named the Count also lived in the same town. Sometimes the Count threw grand dinners for his wealthy friends from other towns. Antonio's grandfather would go to the Count's house to help with the kitchen work. He was a fine cook, as he was a stonecutter. One day, Antonio went with his grandfather to the Count's estate. The boy could not cook or wait on the grand table, but he could help clean up. As workers set the grand table, there was a crash in the dining room. A man, pale and afraid, came quickly into the kitchen holding stone fragments. "Oh, what should I do?" he cried. "I broke the centerpiece statue. The grand table will look bare without it, and the Count will be angry." The staff trembled. Was the dinner going to be a failure? Would they all be punished? Everything depended on having the grand table perfectly set. All of the staff asked, "What should we do?" Little Antonio approached the terrified man who broke the centerpiece. "If you had another statue, could you set the grand table perfectly?" "Certainly," said the man, "if it were the right length and height." "Perhaps I can make something that will work," said Antonio. The man laughed. "Impossible! Who are you? Talking about making statues on an hour's notice." "I am Antonio Canova." "Let the boy try and see what he can do," said the grandfather. The staff agreed. And so, since nothing else could be done, the man allowed Antonio to try. In the kitchen, a 200-pound piece of butter sat, waiting to be appropriately prepared. It had just arrived, fresh from the milk farm on the mountain. With a kitchen knife in hand, Antonio shaped this butter. He quickly created the shape of a proud lion, and all of the staff came closer to see it. "How beautiful!" they cried. "It's much better than the broken statue." When it was finished, the man carried the statue to its place. "The grand table will be more beautiful than I ever hoped to make it." When the Count and his friends came to dinner, the first thing they saw was the yellow lion on the grand table. "What a beautiful work of art!" they cried. "Nobody but a great artist could ever create such a figure. Who made it?" "Truly, my friends," the Count said, "this is as much a surprise to me as to you." The Count then called his head staff member and asked where he had found this wonderful statue. "It was made only an hour ago by a little boy in the kitchen," said the man. This information made the Count's friends wonder more, so the Count called the boy into the room. "My boy," he said, "you have done a piece of work of which the greatest artists would be proud. What is your name, and who is your teacher?" "My name is Antonio Canova, and I have had no teacher but my grandfather, the stonecutter." All the guests came to stand around Antonio. There were famous artists among them, and they knew that the boy was a prodigy. When they sat down at the grand table, nothing pleased them more than talking to Antonio. and the dinner became a party in his honor. The very next day, the Count sent for Antonio to live with him. The best artists in the land taught him to sculpt, and he learned how to carve in marble. In a few years, Antonio Canova became known as one of the greatest sculptors in the world.